Katie, by the way, says that Bingo is both the dog and the owner's name, the farmer, because the dog identifies as the farmer's dog. Therefore, farmer's name. I'm John's dog. I'm Bingo's dog. Bingo.
I accept it. Whatever. No. I still am questioning everything in my life that I've ever known. So
certainly why we call things Bingo.
Yeah.
And was the game before the song?
So welcome back, everybody.
Hi.
I think, hi, Jamie.
Hello, Dalton.
I think we've done a pretty good job, at least you've done a very good job, the first 2 episodes, talking about, setting up how real-time policing works, how real-time crime centers work, right?
Sure.
Laying the foundation for people to understand how these things work, if there's a question about it.
Yeah.
But in terms of when you actually make that decision, when you make the decision to build the crime center, like where do you go from there?
Good. I mean, it's a good question in the sense that we all have been told, I want to build a crime center or build me a crime center, et cetera. And really, it comes down to start with, why? Why does an agency think they need that? Or if they know they need it, what led them to that decision that they do need it? So really, I think if we were to say, do this by steps, right? Step 1 of this process is identify the why. So as an agency, as a city, as a county, whatever it might be, start with the why. What led us to this point, right? And anytime that I get in front of a group of chiefs or anybody in law enforcement, the first thing that I ask them is, let me take the low-hanging fruit, and the low-hanging fruit is I want to reduce crime.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So let me take that one. What else is present? Right? So how
many of them have said, I want to build a cool-looking room?
A couple. Right? Yeah, and that's the thing. We talked about it a little bit in episode 2, is the concept of these rooms look great.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they're flash, and they're cool to get into. And honestly, when they expand the room and they start to make it even better looking, the aesthetics a lot of times play into the satisfaction of the employees in there. And so
it almost establishes an identity. Almost.
Yeah.
It's like, this is our room. This is our identity.
That's right. Yeah. And so, when you get to the concept of the why, I would throw this back to you. So episode 1, you had mentioned why or how you started this concept in Fort Worth. So let's fast forward a little bit past that. You started to assemble this real-time crime center. What were you hoping to achieve with the physical location of a crime center?
Yeah, so I mean, when you continue to expand and you get more people in place, at some point the teamwork aspect comes into play. Like, I want to have everybody nearby so they can play off of each other, essentially.
Yeah.
At least that's kind of the thought process.
Okay.
And then I just want to have a physical location where investigators can come and ask questions.
Okay.
Maybe they have a case that they need to come in and say, hey, I've got this problem. Rather than, sending an impersonal email, they actually want to come and take part in it as well. We had that a lot. We had officers come by. Sometimes there would be a particular crime spree occurring, and individual officers from specialized units and things of that nature would actually come in, sit in with us, and it's obviously that's very hard to do if you're spaced out in a detective office with cubicles. So you really need the room itself in terms of when you get to a certain size, in my opinion. You may disagree. To facilitate the teamwork aspect.
Yeah. Okay. I don't disagree that you need a room. I don't know that you need a cool, flashy video wall laden room, but you need a room, right? So that makes all the sense in the world. And if you think about that, why? So at some point, you and your agency had to come to that conclusion of this is going to solve, or at least we think it's going to solve, the need for a centralized location. So that could be the why for agencies. So that's where I like starting. Is let's back up a little bit from the, hey, I want a crime center. Let's talk about real-time policing. Why do you as an agency want to real-time police? And we mentioned it already, the efficiency, the safety, the just bringing technology into play and then leveraging that technology.
Okay, so why did you build the room?
So we built it to, as it was described to me by the chief and the IT manager who built it, both very smart folks that had some great vision. That room was built as a video monitoring center, right? The concept was we had live cameras around the city, traffic cameras, and we wanted to monitor those to help the response to car crashes, to be honest, and then when crime occurred to help mitigate the crime. So the why made sense. However, we could have done that with a desk and a computer. Right. We could have just assigned some classification of personnel to say, hey, we want you to monitor cameras, and oh, by the way, get on this radio if something happens, right? And speak to the responders. So there's some element of what you said into that, which is it needs to be centralized, and we need to start, and this is a theme that I hope that our listeners, I hope it resonates with the listeners and they think about it as they go through their own processes. There needs to be a question you always ask yourself: what else can this place do for the community, the department, et cetera?
Because you're talking about outside of what my goal is to solve crime, or whatever crime related. You're talking about something other than crime.
So I ask agencies in the very beginning when they think, and I challenge them to think about other things that classifications can do, because what I've realized in mine, and you can tell me if this was the case for you, is we needed to show value in everything that we do. And so what we couldn't do is have someone that's in an operator mode inside of a real-time center sitting there for hours waiting for something to happen, right? So we needed some value there. So that is a why, right? So why did we build it? Why do we need it? For us, it was video monitoring, and it progressed from there. And that's the step one, right? The why.
Yeah. So there's one thing that I've heard you say before in meetings, and I remember this because it goes completely over my head because I'm a moron. And it's the question that you ask about establishing your policing philosophy. Mm-hmm. Like, double click on that for me and explain it like I'm a 3-year-old.
Yeah. So any good learner and any good listener takes things away. So not you, clearly. They take things away from things they've heard from influential folks, right? And the current chief of Elk Grove PD once said that, we police the quality of life. And it got me to thinking, because, up until that point, sure, we always have, but it wasn't really something that we had talked about. And so it really got me to thinking that actually is the case for the majority of our agencies throughout the country.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, hang on. Walk me through what you're talking about. Give me a garden variety scenario of policing quality of life through a crime center.
So the easiest one for me is you have many families who live in your jurisdictions that have disabled children, developmentally disabled children, disabled parents, developmentally disabled parents, and parents with dementia, right? And so if you think about that demographic of folks, they go missing, right? And so a lot of times they go missing, let's say at night, overnight, and the family doesn't realize they're missing until 7 hours later, when the household starts to wake up and they're wondering, hey, where is so-and-so? They call 911 and they're frantic, right? This is who's missing. Here are the reasons why they're at risk, et cetera. And so 2 scenarios play out. Oftentimes the police have already located that person but didn't know where they lived, right? Maybe they're nonverbal and they couldn't communicate where they lived, and so now we're able to piece that together, right? Well, just being able to piece that together and deliver them to their home, that is quality of life improvement for the community.
Yeah,
right?
So non-criminal, but absolutely vital to the community.
And some would say almost more important, right, in that scenario. And so, you can go, there's a ton of different examples of that, but missing people is one of those examples where if an agency has the resources or access to the resources, they will throw everything they can at an at-risk missing person case very quickly to try to locate that person. And so you want to develop an agency's procedures around ensuring that you do that, right? Because it's inherently known. If there is a shooting, we're going to come.
Right.
You don't need much of a procedure to say, we should probably get there pretty quick.
Yeah.
You need a procedure to say, oftentimes, or sometimes at least, this critical missing person actually trumps this other, say, verbal disturbance, right? Something like that. So that's quality of life, and it runs the gamut, right? So it goes from that to clean streets, to community policing, to we did something at my last agency that I thought was genius. We did something called Barbecue in the Beat. Shout out to the PIO there, Jimenez.
Y'all have barbecue in California?
That's right. It's here. It's better than Texas.
Oh,
certainly bigger than what you have in Texas. Yeah,
there's going to be Texas listeners sending hate mail right here. California. There's no barbecue in California.
Yeah. Come out. You'll see. Come through. We'll show you that we have barbecue. So. Anyhow, the concept was community policing, and it's not a new concept, but it is the reality of quality of life. So that actually goes into philosophy, right? So after you develop the why, I like agencies, and I also challenge an agency executive staff to develop what their philosophy is. Now, many don't think about it, but they already have it, right? It's ingrained in the agency.
It's just not written down.
Yeah. So I like to get it out there and said out loud so that everybody understands this is the way that we police here. Then I like to ask, what does your community feel about your policing philosophy? What do your electeds feel about your policing philosophy? So start with the why. Go to the philosophy, right? What is it that you do as an organization that would jive with real-time policing, and how do we get there?
Yeah. Okay, so all good points. All good points for sure. So another thing that consistently comes up that I hear all the time from agencies is, and this is especially true of established centers, how do we measure success? Like, what do we do? Is it numbers?
Yeah.
Is it something else?
Let me take that back to the basics, right? So every listener that hears this, that is in law enforcement or in any type of employment that trains people and then gauges the effectiveness of that employee's knowledge and ability. So we'll stick with FTO training in law enforcement, field training, officer training. In order for me to know if my trainee is doing well, I need to know what good looks like, right? And so nearly every agency has some set of measurements or standards that they weigh against what a trainee shows. They display their ability. It's no different in this. So if we look at developing goals, think of goals the same way you think of learning domains in school, the same way you think of categories of field training in that scenario. Think of goals in that same vein. What are our goals for real-time policing? What do we hope to achieve, right? Again, I still drop crime, right? Because that's a low-hanging fruit, and that it is certainly valid, but I want them to think more critically, right?
Well, it's hard to measure that. I mean, it's hard.
Sure.
It's hard to measure an impact on crime that a crime center has. We know it's doing it, but it's hard to definitively say we know for a fact that the crime center lowered crime by 6% in this area.
Right,
it's impossible to do that.
If crime drops significantly after the opening of a real-time crime center, undoubtedly that real-time crime center had some input and success in teaming up on that. But like you said, how do you quantify that this center equals this? Now, there's going to be some stuff that you can quantify, right? Or you can point to and say, well, we haven't had to do this, or we've done this with it. But at the end of the day, your goal has to have some measurement stick, right? You have to. Otherwise, you don't know what good looks like. You know what you want, but how do you get there, and how do you make sure that measurement, that's another piece, is if we measure goal A as the police department, how would the community measure goal A? What's a win to the community? Do those things equal?
I don't think they care about numbers. So the way that I did this internally is it was actually a couple of different layers to it, because I agree with you. You have to measure the internal employees and what they're doing, because you obviously don't want to put an employee A that's just top-notch doing tons of stuff and employee B that does absolutely nothing next to each other and measure them the same.
Happens all the time.
Yeah, all the time. But it's hard to say, because one of the issues that we ran into is that, like, there were some really, really good officers and,
Yeah.
and analysts that we had in my crime center that were very fast. Like they're super fast.
Right.
Something would happen, they jump on it, and the guy next to him, his stats aren't as high because he's like, that guy's just faster.
Yeah.
Right? He's faster.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to do my job, but he's doing it before me, which is great for the community. But one of the things that we did, and I'm wondering if you did it also, or if heard other people did, is I measured something called calls touched. So on every CAD call, we would put a little note, check this person for warrants on a domestic violence call and determine there's no warrants. So we touched that call.
Right.
Or this person's got a felony warrant out through the arrest, FYI, officers that responding. So now you're safer. That's a call that's touched.
Yeah.
So internally, that's how we measured, like, you're doing something.
Yeah.
But externally, from the community standpoint, they don't care about that.
No,
they want to hear
wouldn't.
stories.
Yeah, sure. And so that really goes back to the goal itself first, and then internal. You have measurements internally. Think about what would the community want to see in that goal, right? So if the goal is a faster response to something, what does the community want to see to increase responses to calls for service, right? So if you're in an area where the community's their sentiment is that my police department, it takes them forever to come, where in reality maybe it doesn't, right? They just called one time and it was a busy night and their call was lower priority, et cetera. At the end of that, you have to look at what matters to them and how does that fit in the goal, because at the end of the day, at the true big picture end of the day, the community drives the electeds, which drive the approval and adoption of a budget and the approval of expansion, scalability, et cetera. So you must include at minimum the consideration of what those folks think as you go through that.
So, going back to the storytelling, because I think that you agree with me that painting like a picture for the community, not just the community, but also internally as well, about what these people did and why it had such a dramatic impact on the outcome of that situation is very, very important.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah.
And it brings up a good point for consideration for the listeners here is you had your way of documenting statistics in that way, documenting activity. Many centers, many real-time crime centers throughout the country have their own way of doing that, right? So there might be response times, virtual on-scene times, right? And to explain that, what you tell me for our listeners, what is virtually on-scene?
Yeah, so what we called virtually on-scene or virtual response times was essentially being on-scene with some sort of technology. For us, it was cameras, live cameras, because we had so many live cameras. So garden variety, a disturbance call comes out about a guy trespassing at a store, right?
Right.
Pretty common call. We would activate a camera, get him on view. Officers are responding. Now, from that moment that we get him on view, we're essentially virtually on scene. We're providing real-time information that he's not doing anything dangerous. Granted, there's not a physical officer there, but we're essentially virtually on scene to be able to tell people that are coming what is going on.
So
now, factor in drones,
right?
And now that's a different.
There's a lot, and I bring this up specifically because traditionally, agencies ask for more bodies based on response time, right? And based on the ability to get to things. So I think there's going to be a shift in the industry with if we are virtually on scene and providing intel, canceling calls perhaps, right?
100%.
Things like that. That's going to impact that. So that may be a measurement of the effectiveness or the efficacy of a real-time crime center and just real-time policing. So to sum that up, you want to identify the why. You want to identify the agency goals. You want to identify, are you policing crime or quality of life or both? And what does that ratio look like? You want to look at how you measure the goals to ensure that when you study your efficacy of your initiative, your real-time policing initiative, you want to make sure that you're there, right, as an agency. And you have to be ready to pivot if necessary based on how you're meeting your standards.
Okay, so let's do this. Let's jump to a solve story, and we'll tie this in and wrap it up.
Yeah, sounds good.
Welcome, folks, to today's solve story with me, Katie Peak. Now, this solve story is a really scary one. We all have females we love in our lives, whether that's sisters, mothers, friends, etc. And all of those people we want to protect. Scottsdale Police Department used technology to do just that. Now, in this case, the suspect is a 26-year-old man. He was wanted for several heinous and really violent crimes against females in New York City. After he committed those crimes, he left via New Jersey, went to Phoenix, where he was known to live previously, and started the same string of violence there. So after he attacked a young woman inside of a McDonald's bathroom, a reported stolen vehicle in the area alerted officers that the two were likely related and he was likely in that vehicle. So then started this really frantic search. Obviously, the concern was not to just provide justice for those victims, but to find him before he committed violence against several other females. Scottsdale Police Department used flock license plate readers to track the suspect to a parking garage at Scottsdale Fashion Square. Now, if you're not familiar with Scottsdale Fashion Square, it's a really full mall. It has multiple garages, thousands of people, and tons of opportunities for somebody like this suspect to commit a violent crime. So Scottsdale Police Department is headed towards that area. They begin collaborating with other agencies and were able to locate and arrest him quickly. After that, not only did he confess to all the violence he committed in New York and later in Phoenix, but he did say that he had intended to harm more people. Public safety technology that's used and shared widely across the Phoenix area helped police officers make an immeasurable impact, saving the lives of who knows how many more people. Good work, folks. Back to you, Jamie and Dalton.
Good story. Great story.
I agree.
That's some fantastic police work. Multi-state, technology, it's got everything. But you know what really, really jumps out about that?
Tell me what it is.
I mean, besides the fact that it was fantastic police work, it's the way that Chief Walter from Scottsdale tells the story. Because we were talking about it earlier.
Yeah.
Tell your stories, especially the successes of your crime center.
That's right.
So talk to me about it.
Yeah. So, two things there, right? So telling the story, one, if we go back to how do you start these things, right? How do you do this? One of the things that chiefs that have success in this realm do very well is they successfully market their wins and oftentimes market what they have going on.
Yeah, and it's intentional.
For sure.
It's not like we're just reactively going to tell this story because it was super high profile. They're doing it consistently.
Right.
And the community expects it.
Yeah. And that's where this one really hits, is that you take a city like Scottsdale. When you say Scottsdale, it's one of the cities in America where no matter where you are in America, they know that's Scottsdale, Arizona, right? And they know why it's Scottsdale, Arizona. It's a tourist destination. It is somewhere that is heavily attended for sporting events, for big events, etc. And so their community isn't just residents, right? Their community is the tourist influx, the tourist community as well. And one thing a lot of folks do is look at that type of statistic to determine, should I go somewhere for vacation? Should I take my family here? Should I do this? And so when you have a story like that solved story that you can go out and tell to your public, right? Here's how we as police did fantastic police work. And sometimes we do it in partnership with other agencies. Sometimes we do it individually as a solo officer, a solo dispatcher. But here's how we did good police work and even great police work. Here's how, and like you said, he is a great storyteller.
Yeah,
right?
he could teach a master class.
He can, and probably should.
Yeah.
Chief, teach a class.
Yeah, Jeff, you should do that.
So the concept, though, is that you're able to articulate a set of circumstances that saved someone's life that they didn't even know you and your folks saved.
Yeah.
Right? That's huge. Yeah. The gravity of that is significant. And, imagine you and I up here. Has this ever happened to us? Mm-hmm. And if so, how many times? How many times does that happen in life, right?
It's funny you mention this. Funny you bring this up, because that's actually something that I brought up consistently to my people in the crime center is you're literally going to do things and make decisions and take actions in here that are going to save people's lives, and you're literally never going to know about it.
Yeah.
You're never going to know.
And that's, so you have something that is a fantastic story like that one. But you also have the daily interaction, right? And so the scenario that I've used often is somebody's driving down a street. They see what they think they see, in somebody acting whatever, in whatever way they report it. Say they think this guy is walking down the street, running in and out of traffic, right? They call the police department. The police department enters a call for service because this guy's a hazard. He's running in and out of traffic. And imagine that you have at your agency someone who can look at your live cameras in the city. They see that they find the person, but this person's sitting on the sidewalk or even in the grass next to the sidewalk, not running in and out of traffic. They watch him for a couple of minutes. There's absolutely nothing about that person and what they're doing that is suspicious and or hazardous. And they close the call out, right? So we could have just saved multiple lives that day, right? We could have, as a real-time policing employee, could have saved the officer's life that may have contacted that person, could have saved that person's life, both of them, a passerby, right?
So I actually have a really good story about saving an actual, suspects, allegedly, live. We had a call one time, this was several years ago, about a guy walking down the street with a handgun, walking towards a hospital. Okay. He's walking up. We got him on camera. We're telling officers that are responding, yes, he's walking with a gun in his hand, obviously very suspicious. And as we're watching him, he reaches out, boom, 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 starts firing off shots at the hospital.
Yeah.
Okay. We're obviously telling officers this. They're almost there.
Right.
And as they're pulling up, he tosses the gun over the bridge. It was really hard to see from their perspective, but we saw it. And we told him, he just tossed the gun. He threw the gun. He does not have it.
Yeah.
And seconds later, they jump out.
Yeah.
Now, what potentially could have happened if we wouldn't have told them that?
That's right.
Probably nothing.
But you don't know.
Probably nothing.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
Hypothetically, possibly, we actually saved that guy's life by just giving that one tidbit of information.
Yep.
Very quick.
Probably nothing happens a lot.
Yes.
Right? But something does happen sometimes. And that's, the one that I like to think back on is a very, it's not quite as sensational as a guy popping shots off at a hospital, right? But guy walking down the street, we have eyes on him from the real-time camera. He's walking towards our camera. We see him as an officer is approaching from behind in their car. We see him reach into his waistband. Immediately, we're thinking, here it goes, right? He pulls out a hammer that we clearly identify as a hammer in the moment and drops it on the ground. And we get on the radio and say, it's a hammer that he pulled out of his waistband. Now, we wouldn't have said anything other than pulled something out of his waistband if we didn't have clear eyes on that, right? But again, do we know that officer saw that? Do we know they saw it the same way we saw it, et cetera? So these are the things. When agencies think about real-time policing, this is stuff that happens that you're doing already, right? You already have some level of that going on now at your agency. It's time to start putting that into writing, right? What does it look like? How are you doing it? What do you need to continue it? What do the measurements look like to make sure that good is good and good looks good? And so, and just a public service announcement to every agency out there with license plate readers from anywhere, right? If your dispatch center takes a call for service, and let's say that call for service includes a license plate of a car, we all know across the country that there are certain requirements that need to be met to enter a car into NCIC, right? But you have, hopefully, internal procedures for what you can enter into your own local hot list. Imagine you have someone designed to enter that plate into your local hot list as the call's being entered or just afterwards, and you start to have LPR function as eyes on the ground for you.
Yep.
Right? That is the fastest way to involve real-time policing in your agency, and you can do it today if you have LPR.
Yeah.
All you have to do is figure out who would do that entry and put some parameters around it. How long does it exist? What are our stop enforcement actions, if any, right? Come up with a procedure real quick, but do that.
I've actually mentioned that very thing to people and gotten pushback. And they're like, well, we got to have certain parameters. I'm like, well, how is it any different than your dispatcher
putting it on the
sending
radio.
out a bolo on the radio? They do this all the time for all manner of things.
That's right.
All manner of things.
And that's really what needs to be thought of is
it's essentially a digital broadcast.
That's all it is, right? And again, officers are trained and are good at what they do to determine if there's probable cause to stop a vehicle or not, right? So if they get behind that car, and this happens every day in our country, you get behind a car, you ensure you have that probable cause before you effect the stop, right? Even if that means you're talking to the officers on scene of the call to say, hey, what do we have here, right? How often have you heard that on the radio? What do we have, right? So anyway, that is, if you want to know, you know, how can I real-time police today? That's how. You already have that tech. Now you start building wins with that.
Yeah.
And imagine what that can do if we enhance all of that with other stuff.
Tell those stories.
Yep. Tell the stories.
Tell the stories to the community.
And tell them well.
Yeah. Don't tell them poorly, because somebody's going to listen.
That's right. Yeah, do a good job.
Cool. All right. This has been fun. This is a good one. What are we going to talk about next episode?
Analysis, real-time
analysis.
Yeah.
And continue to build on the foundation that we're building.
Yeah, and how the word analyst is defined differently everywhere.
I like it.
Sounds good.
Next time.
See you next time.